G.I. Joe was military fantasy. It always had a weird bend, a weird balance of being some sort of military strike team that bordered on the line of sci-fi fantasy and had elements of science fiction built in that made it very cool. And it always sort of balanced on that line in the way James Bond would, you know, going, of course, a little crazy sometimes. Laser cannons, lasers, robots. So it struck a balance until 1987, in which it went absolutely insane and became one of the great years of G.I. Joe. A year that some people hate, some people love. 1987, the weirdest year of G.I. Joe. So we're going to rank all the figures that came out in 1987 from the worst to the best. Now, whenever you have a ranking, you get a sort of non-linear tour of the worst and the best all in one, and it's a fun way to unpack everything that came out this year. Here, I'm just going to talk about the figures, not the vehicles, but I will talk about any figure, even if they came with a vehicle. So let's get into it. What's the worst figure? What's the best? What do you think? What do I get wrong? What do I got right? Do you love this year? Do you hate it? A lot of us are very mixed on this year because this is a year where we have the fridge, we've got Cobra Law, we've got, which is sort of divisive, and we've got Battle Force 2000. So there's a lot of weird here, but overall, there's a lot of incredible stuff, and it all is very iconic. So this is the last year, I believe, that Ron Rudat was designing figures. He passed the torch in this year. I believe Mark Pennington took over and designed from here on in. Some of these were things that, from what I understand, from 3D Joe's, which is like the greatest resource for G.I. Joe knowledge, by the way. Check it out. The guy who creates it's a great human being. I don't know him. Just what is the work that he does is great. 3D Joe's awesome website where you can get lots of information, just about everything you want to know. Check it out. What was happening in 87, I think, if we look at why did it get so weird? Well, Ron Rudat quit, or I said, put me on something else. I just need to be on something else. I've been doing this line for years now, and I'm tired of it. I'm out of. So I think these were his last ideas. This is like, I'm throwing everything at the wall. I've designed so many figures, so many, and even some of the vehicles. He designed a bunch of the vehicles too. The Fang, the hydrofoil, a couple other things. And now he's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I don't know, guy. It was crocodiles. He likes crocodiles, and you know, it gets a little crazy. Here's the worst to the best. 1987, G.I. Joe's weird year. Okay, at the very bottom of the list, I am gonna put my boy Sneak Peek. I have a little love for Sneak Peek, so I don't mean to be shitting on poor Sneak Peek. But apparently Sneak Peek is based on Owen King, Stephen King's son. He's got a weird face sculpt. It's kind of a nerd. I don't know if that's sorry, Owen King, but he's got like a little bit of a nerdy face sculpt, which is cool. I mean, like I like the fact that all the G.I. Joe guys are not uber Superman types. They have different body types. They're different kinds of guys. That's the way the military is, and you can still be, you know, a hero and not look like Duke, right? So that's a good thing. But what sucks about Sneak Peek, what sucks really hard, is his major accessory, which is a giant periscope. This thing makes zero sense in any way. First of all, it's so big and bulky that if you were to carry it into battle, you would be so exhausted after about 5 minutes that you would just toss it in the trash. Second of all, it's completely worthless. It's like, oh, we need Sneak Peek. We've got to see over a 3-foot high fence, you know, a wall or something. That's what you need him for. And then the second you would like lift up this giant periscope, the Cobra Sniper is going to shoot right through it. And that's all I remember doing. What I remember doing with Sneak Peek, tell me you do the same, is like, goes into battle. Immediately, he hammers that thing on somebody's face. It cracks. He's done with it. He's got his machine gun now. He's just a grunt. But even as a grunt, he's just sort of doughy. And he's got a weird face. And he's wearing red, which is not a good battle, you know, uniform idea. It's nothing about this figure. He's a terrible figure. Okay. Number 38, we have Rumbler. You don't know who Rumbler is, do you? Rumbler came with the remote control car, which I do have, but Rumbler is like the most boring figure you can ever imagine. He is basically crankcase, but I think he's got like Footloose's face. He's about as generic a figure as you can possibly get. So, not a fan of Rumbler. Nothing wrong with him, but he's cannon fodder as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just like he's like first one down, that's Rumbler. Next in line, we have Crazy Legs. Okay. Crazy Legs, he's okay. He's okay. The Night Force Crazy Legs that I got with the Dragonfly is better than the original Crazy Legs. Because Crazy Legs is wearing red. Okay? You do not wear red to battle. A little bit of red. Cobras wear a little red spot. That's okay. I got it. They're Cobras. Wearing red is like saying, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me. It just does not make any sense. And then why is he called Crazy Legs? I was just wondering, like, where did that come from? What's the idea of Crazy Leg?
Like, it makes me want to smile. What's happening?
Oh, God. I'm so sorry. It's my restless leg syndrome.
Does he kick his legs like crazy when he's just a parachute trooper? And he's Ripcord. We have Ripcord. He's just not as good as Ripcord. He's Ripcord, but not good. I don't love him. I don't hate him, but I don't love him. Okay. Next in line, we have Psych Out. Psych Out. Oh, what is this thing? What is Psych Out? Psych Out is gotta be one of the dumbest designs of any figure. Now, one thing I will say I like about Psych Out is his face. His face sculpt feels very unique and very interesting. And then the idea of what he does, right? So his idea is he is like psychological warfare. So he screws with you. Put him in a business suit then, because what is this suit? First of all, it looks absolutely ridiculous. Then he's got like sonar dishes on his arms. And he's got like a speaker. I think what he's supposed to be doing with this is using like sound waves to just like irritate you. Or maybe it's like, it's like one of those tactics that the military will use when they want to get somebody and drive somebody insane. In a hostage situation, they'll play really bad music. So he's just like playing. Maybe he's just got that's a little boombox and he plays like, "Baby, don't hurt me no more," over and over again for like 7 days. And then like the Cobra goes crazy. I don't know. It's just, he doesn't make no sense to me. His suit is stupid. I know some people probably like Psych Out. You probably want a Psych Out. No, I don't want Psych Out. Terrible. Terrible character. Keep him out of classified. I don't need a Psych Out. I'm not buying a Psych Out in classified. Next in line, we have Hardtop. Hardtop is the driver of the Defiant. He drives the launcher. There's nothing wrong with Hardtop. He's toll booth. He's toll booth in blue. He's got a construction cap. He's just there. Let's move on. Next in line, we're gonna have we're gonna go right through these just in a row because Battle Force 2000 is not my favorite thing. It's a cool idea, but it just doesn't deliver on the promise. Like, I wasn't excited by Battle Force 2000, and neither was Larry Hama, because he kills them all mercilessly, just mows them all down. Of the comic, he just kills every one of them. The idea is good. A special cadre of soldiers that is the highest tech, just like absolutely loaded out with super technology, right? A sort of if Flash was like, or sci-fi would have been the soldiers that were operating tech that goes above and beyond normal military. These guys are the next level of that. That's a cool idea. The idea that their vehicles would break apart and become this battle fortress is a cool idea, except that the battle fortress sucks so hard that it is just utterly worthless. It just does not. It's not a fortress. It is not high tech. It's just stupid. It just does not work in any way. And apparently it was budget cuts and all kinds of things, so I don't fault the people, the great, brilliant designers who designed other things that really worked out, and then they designed Battle Force 2000. Now let's go down the list of the figures of Battle Force 2000 from what I think are the lamest to the best, okay? And then one I'm going to save because he's actually cool and put him all the way towards the front, or middle. Okay, first, Maverick. Okay, so Maverick, he's just a pilot and, you know, generic looking. He's about as generic looking as you can get. And then we've got, and his title, it's like, okay, we all watch Top Gun. We don't need Maverick. Next in line, we have Blaster. Again, just a weird, not very exciting design. He's wearing all green. He's got a COVID mask on. You could take it off. That was kind of cool. You could take that COVID mask on and be like, nope, COVID's over. I'm going to recognize that. And then he would be, you know, okay. But he didn't, so he has like a mask. He has a mask over his face, which is kind of cool. You can pull that part off. That was kind of cool. But he's wearing like bright green. And his weapon's done. Okay, Avalanche. So Avalanche is a snow trooper, and this puts him a little higher on the list because at least what you could do is you could just like add him in with Iceberg and Frostbite and Blizzard and all the snow troopers and Snow Job, and because you could use another one. Why not have another one? And he's got a gun. It's okay. But again, just none of the design feels inspired here. None of this is, they're not great. Next we have Blocker, and this one kind of works for me. He looks kind of badass. The sculpt of his face is strong. He's got almost like an armor looking thing going on. And so he's okay. And then Knockdown. Knockdown has the most interesting look out of this lot. He has this helmet. Now this sort of like more fits the promise of what Battle Force 2000 might be in a better executed version where he's got a sort of half his face exposed and half has like different technical readouts. So I think we needed more of that in this line. If you're going to do this idea, the idea is they should have tech that other people don't have. That's what makes them interesting. And so he's got okay, you know, look to him. It's super weird. He's like the weirdest looking one. Almost cool looking. Again, none of these are great. So I'm not, you know, I don't love any of them. I do love one, and that's why he's all the way up. But anyway, that's basically Knockdown. Next, we have the Gyro Viper. Now, the Gyro Viper comes with the Mamba, and that gives him points for being very cool, because the Mamba is one of the coolest vehicles of all time. His look, though, is kind of dull. As far as the design of a vehicle driver, he just doesn't really stand out in any way. What's weird is you pull his little face up, he's got a big kind of schnoz, he's got a big nose, so it's like you want to be a Gyro Viper, you gotta be a big nose. You gotta have a big nose. Just like if you want to be a Rock Viper, you gotta wear a little tiny mustache. That's the thing. So that's all weird. Next in line we have the Sea Slug. Now the Sea Slug was the pilot of the Sea Ray, which is sort of like Cobra's version of the Shark, which is a cool little vehicle. So the Shark, you know, can come out of the water and also fly. So the Sea Ray, this can do the same thing. The Sea Slug has a cool look, but just not for G.I. Joe. I mean, he looks like something out of Weird Fantasy. He's got a very odd look. He's got a little tiny laser gun. He just looks super science fiction, and so it doesn't really work for me. But not the worst. He's not the worst character. Next on we have Backstop. Now Backstop, okay. And from here on, I think we're getting to the good. So whenever we do these things, we're ranking. I've ranked a lot of things here. I've ranked all the ninjas. I've ranked all the women on both sides. I ranked the original Joes. In a ranking, you're going to start bad. I'm going to start by bitching and complaining and saying that why things just aren't good and making fun of them. And then as we get towards the front, I'm going to be like in love, you know. And in the middle here, we get a middle where it's like, I'm not in love yet, but I kind of dig this guy. Backstop. Backstop was a pretty cool figure who came with the Persuader, which was one of those vehicles that looked very science fiction, had a very serious looking laser cannon. What I like about Backstop is a couple things. He's got this very crazy looking helmet and some armor. So it's like, yeah, you know, we always talk about how in G.I. Joe, nobody ever has any armor on. They're always like in a position in whatever vehicle they are where they're going to get shot any minute. And Backstop, at least, he can sit in his vehicle, but then the top, his head's exposed, but he's got a very serious looking helmet and an armor plating on the top. He also had a pretty crazy ass looking Dirty Harry ass gun. And so the helmet, and I remember his like the front of his helmet comes out quite a bit. It's like very unusual in its design. Kind of worked for me. I like this guy. I like the Persuader too. It's a good little vehicle. Okay, next we have Steamroller. Now Steamroller is a sleeper figure for me. This is a figure that came with the mobile command center. And, you know, he's kind of a lot of times the vehicle drivers are not the most exciting. But in the case of Steamroller, this is a guy that's just full of character. First of all, he looks like a guy that's sitting at the end of the bar in like a towny bar somewhere, just getting shit-faced on like Miller Lights, you know, on a Tuesday, you know. But he also he reminds me of Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson was one of those dudes that was like older but super ripped. You know, it was like always just like kind of jacked old guy, and he just looks like he's just like a super jacked old guy, and he just has a look to him, just look and a feel that makes him stand out. He's one of the cooler vehicle drivers. Next in line we have the Fridge, and I know some of you probably love the Fridge. Maybe some of you were big football fans in the 87. I was not, you know, and it meant nothing to me. He was like, I got him because he was a G.I. Joe, and I got all of them. He just was a big doofy guy with a football on a chain. What are you going to do with a football on a chain? You're walking into battle, and you get a football on a chain, and everybody else is shooting at you. I guess if he's not battling, the idea is that he's the trainer, and so you train. And written in the file card is he trains because you got to get past him, and you can't get past him. He's this massive dude. He's good at his job. So I get that. Kind of cool. Not my favorite. Okay, next in line we have Payload. Now at Payload, it came with the Defiant. He had a backpack that he could pilot and, you know, use air or whatever to push himself along through outer space and float through outer space. And it had an attachment that was like a bendable piece that would attach the Defiance with like a lifeline. And that was very cool, very exciting. It felt like the backpack had a couple spots where it could put some laser beams could come out of it. And so he was an awesome figure. And of course, being in the Defiant, one of the greatest vehicles of all time, one of the coolest things they ever did, he gets a high spot here. Next in line we have the Ice Viper. Now the Ice Viper came with a Cobra Wolf. I loved the Ice Vipers. The Ice Vipers were really cool for a couple reasons. The Wolf is an awesome vehicle. Very cool snow vehicle. I love snow battles. I was big into snow battles. I'm from New England. We had a lot of snow. And, you know, just ski missiles is just such a cool idea. What I love about the Wolf is he comes with, instead of a gun, which was like, I was always excited when anybody came with anything. Like, I like guns, but if they came with a knife or sword, like, that was my thing. And he came with 2 Psi, which makes no sense at all, because it's like, you're an Arctic fighter and you get 2 Psi, which are sword catchers. Like, the idea of a Psi is you catch swords, break swords, you know, and then fight with them too. It's what Electra uses, right? So he came with 2 like that kind of weapon. And what was awesome though, design wise, is they strapped to his thighs, which was super cool. So man, for me back in the day, it was super, like, he had a ninja vibe to him, even though he's not a ninja. He's got ninja weapons, and they strapped to his thighs, which was like, most of the time you didn't have a place to store these weapons. So that was just awesome and unheard of for a vehicle driver. Okay, next in line we have Slaughter's Renegades, and these, of course, 3 characters were prominent in the movie, and love these 3. Love all 3 of them. So we're in all good, all love. This is all love from here on in. Just love, okay? But what's great about the Renegades is, you know, it says on their file cards, the idea is like, these are the guys, these are Black Ops guys, but they're worse, like the most, like, you drop them off and you pretend they don't exist. Like, they're not affiliated with G.I. Joe. They're going to do jobs that no one will do, and if they're caught, the American government's going to say, we don't know who you are, we have nothing to do with you. And that's very cool concept. I think in general, a lot of times G.I. Joe would do that. Larry Hama would have that a lot of times in the comic book. I'd be like, oh, we've disavowed you. Forget it. You don't exist. But to have a little team of those, I think, is great. In the order of how cool I think they are, we have Red Dog. Red Dog is Samoan, and he's a big dude. So I think love a Red Dog in classified. Big Samoan football player. To make a Red Dog, you got to make a massive. Next line, we have Taurus. Now, Taurus was an acrobat and circus performer, I believe. And he, I think, had a scimitar kind of weapon in the cartoon. So hopefully in that, they weren't very, like, one of the things they would say about the Renegades pack, it was sort of like the good guy pack versus Cobra La. And, you got 3 characters, all interesting, but no good real accessories with them. They were pretty bland. Each one came with a gun. Red Dog came with a pistol. Taurus came with a strange gun, and so did Mercer. So, I think Taurus could be cooler if you give him that scimitar, and I'd love to see what Classified would do with him. And of course, Mercer. Now, Mercer is a great concept for a character. Mercer has, as a character, been lifted up by the Energon universe. Finally there. Somebody's using Mercer properly. Whereas the idea of Mercer is he's a former Viper who defects from Cobra. And now nobody trusts him. G.I. Joe does not trust him. They don't like him. The fact that he was a Viper once. That gives him a weird morality. In the new Energon universe, he's Destro's right-hand man. And the action figure is pretty bland. He's just not a very exciting action figure. Although the concept is great. I actually like Mercer version 2, bizarrely enough. I think Mercer version 2 has elements, came out in later years, and he was one of those who had like the stupid, super bright colored weapons that fired. But removing that weapon, he is a very cool looking figure because he kind of retains some of his Viper uniform, and he's got a some chainmail looking arm. And looks very cool. But if you're going to do a Mercer figure, you got to have the little no Cobra symbol that he had, which this figure does not have, which is a little disappointing. But still, Renegades were a cool concept with okay execution. Next in line, we have Fast Draw. Now, Fast Draw has just a batshit insane weapon system on him. It's a backpack with 2 anti-aircraft missiles and little controllers. It does. The only thing about Fast Draw that kind of stinks is like, okay, so you take Fast Draw in battle, he fires his 2 little missiles, and then what does he go home? But I sort of imagine those missiles as being, controllable or, heat seeking. They're really much more powerful, and maybe those little hand, I think like the hand controllers, I would make them guns too. So he's got something, and maybe have a loadout where somehow he's got more missiles that he can load. But those missiles are huge. But it's just an inventive looking figure, even though, like he'd blow his load and he's done, and he gets to go home. It's a very inventive looking figure. The fact that his helmet could flip up, I love that. I really liked him as a figure. Next, we have Dodger. Now, Battle Force 2000, and overall, just not good idea, but the one good figure out of Battle Force 2000, I would argue, is Dodger. One, he looks like and is inspired by the Marines from Aliens, and he really does look like an alien, an Aliens character. Decked out, sleeveless, but what makes him really, he has a great look, but what really makes him stand out is his weapon. This long missile launcher rifle, but what it has on the handle is a sort of trench knife kind of spiked knuckles thing on the handle of a rifle. Rocket launcher. It's a very weird weapon. For me, it kind of fulfills the promise of Battle Force 2000 and stands out as the one figure in that I actually do kind of like. Next in line, we have the driver of the Maggot, the Worms. Now, this to me is just a winner as design. This is just an incredible design. I like the Maggot as a vehicle, but then I have a few of them. So for some reason, I think I picked up a couple of Maggots by accident. I got 2 for Christmas or something, and I wouldn't want to return that shit. I wanted 2. It was one of those things your parents, your mom's like, oh, you already have that. And I'm like, yeah, and I want 10 of them. So I was like, fine. Oh no, don't return that shit. So I got a couple of Worms, which is very cool. always wish when like they came out with that in an ideal world, you would have 3 worms. You would to pilot your maggot, because it's got those 3 places and you need 3 of those guys stationed all around it to do the many different jobs that it would probably take to run that kind of thing. You know, one guy doesn't really run a tank. It takes several people to run a tank. That makes more sense to me. The worms just had a great look. They look just like the Rocketeer. They've got this, you know, they got a little ascot going here, and they've got that very sort of buttoned up suit and that Rocketeer helmet that could come off. In fact, the helmet was removable. So worms were just a win for me. Okay, next they're going to be surprisingly low on the list, and not because the character is not something I don't like, because the figure sucks in comparison to this character, and this is Nemesis Enforcer. Nemesis Enforcer is okay. So we talked about Cobra Law, and I think a lot of you. There's 2 sides of Cobra Law. There's a group that's like, Cobra Law ruined G.I. Joe for me, because it took what was, you know, military fantasy and it pushed it too far into science fiction weirdness, and so now I can't go along with that. On the other hand, there's people who are like, G.I. Joe is always weird. It's always weird. It's got giant laser cannons and jump packs and robots, and nobody wears the proper dress code, and there's animal companions, and it's silly and crazy, and it's always been this way, so it's ridiculous to talk about how it's silly to have a Cobra Law. I'm directly in the middle of you, okay? This is when it came out, I was like, Cobra Law, oh, this is way too far. I don't like the origin. I was a big comic book fan. I like Cobra Commander being this psychopath who starts Cobra through a pyramid scheme and rises and creates a terrorist organization. That is my preferred idea of Cobra. I made a video explaining my take on that, based on that, because I like it so much. So yes, I prefer no Cobra Law. I don't like Cobra Law being mixed in. However, as much as even the day when I saw the movie, I was like, this is pushing it too far, I don't like it. I also was like, oh, but the design of these things is incredible. I really love the design. So, I do think it's an extraordinary design. I think it looks at something from weird fantasy. It's conceptually really interesting. The crustacean kind of armor, the weapons that they use, all of it. It doesn't feel generic. I think later on when G.I. Joe goes Lunartic's Empire, that shit feels really generic, you know, and cool, you know, in its own way as an Aliens, but generic and not feeling G.I. Joe. So in a way, Cobra Law still feels like G.I. Joe because it had that element of design that was specifically great. It was a greatness in its design. For me, what I did with it is I didn't make them, you know, the secret race. They were like another thing. They were like bioweapons, and they worked with Cobra. That's how I kind of retconned it in my own head canon, so that I could use them sometimes, because I did like the figures. But the one figure we have to admit is really disappointing, especially if you watch the movie, is Nemesis Enforcer is so disappointing. When you see him in the cartoon, he's massive, he's intimidating. His bat wings are crazy, arcing from his back. He's got these giant spikes that can rip apart a Havoc. When you get the figure, he's got little tiny spikes. His face is kind of adorable. He's not intimidating at all. And those wings suck. They are like rubber. They're just rubber wings that fall off. You really have to do so much imagining to make him anywhere near as cool as he is in the cartoon. And so he just doesn't really, it's just not a good figure. I think he's the worst figure of the 3. He's probably the best character of the 3 and the worst figure. So the Nemesis Immortal classified guy, that thing's incredible, and that thing lives to the promise of Nemesis Immortal, and we can, you know, is a great figure. But that one, the original one, sucks. Next in line, we have Gung Ho version 2. This was always a very cool figure. It's the only figure we got of a guy in his dress clothes. I'm a big Gung Ho fan. He would be in my top 10 easy favorite characters of all time. He's this crazy, jarhead. And I was also a fan of anybody that comes with a sword. It would have been great if the sword was out of its scabbard, but I get it's an ornamental sword. But still, you're a kid. You don't care it's ornamental. He's using that thing. He's cutting heads off with that thing. I mean, that's a sword. So I got a sword out of it. I got a cool looking, dress uniform. We could, pretending that he's attending a funeral and gets attacked. Whatever. It's a good figure. Something maybe they could do more of. Next in line, we have Chuckles. Now, Chuckles was kind of a cool figure at the time, inspired by Miami Vice and Magnum PI, which are big shows in the era. It was just a cool idea to have this undercover guy. And this is one where I think, of course, when we weigh what makes a figure good, we have to look at everything. Design, its sculpt, its accessories, and its file card. And man, is one of the best file cards. The idea is this guy is so good at infiltrating. He can talk anybody out of anything. His personality is that he can get into a room, get everybody laughing, and then the next thing he's shooting. What his elevated Chuckles would be the Mike Costa Cobra series from IDW, which turns him into a main character and has made me really love the character. But I'm going back with how I felt about him in 1987. And for me, he was like B-list, C-list maybe. A good figure, a good character. I like that he does a different thing. We don't have a lot of covert ops characters. We have Lady J. We have, Scarlet kind of did counterintelligence. So imagine her as Master Disguise too. But an infiltrator. We didn't have that. So this was it was very unique, I think, in the line to have this guy. Came with a gun with a holster, not very exciting. In the accessories, wearing a Hawaiian shirt, it's weird. The dress code's always weird. Face sculpt is awesome. He looked a little bit like Steve McQueen to me. So I thought that was also a plus, as I'm an old movie fan. He had Steve McQueen's face. I'm sure it's not. It's probably the face of somebody who works at Hasbro, as most of these things are. But the sculpt looks like Steve McQueen. Next in line, we have Golobulus. Now, Golobulus, again, a promise of a great figure and not necessarily the delivery of a great figure. When you see Golobulus in the cartoon, he's a massive, amazing thing. It's so intimidating. That snake tail. And I loved having the snake tail. For me, that was just so cool to have it like whip and wrap around people and crush them. And he had this sort of weird weapon. What the hell is it? It's like a crustacean laser. I don't know. It was okay. But the idea of him is great. The delivery of him sucks. Okay, again, the Cobra, the delivery, the design, awesome. The look, awesome. The cartoon, awesome. As much as it's not, for me, what G.I. Joe is, I did appreciate and love the look of it and the feel of it, and I love, the lore written in the file cards. It talks about ancient civilizations and whatever. And Golobulus is cool. Burgess Meredith made his voice coming out of him, and I think anytime you played with action figures, you were taking the voice probably from the cartoon. A lot of times it was from the cartoon. Even Destro to me was Arthur Burkhardt's voice with a Scottish accent. It was like a half Arthur Burkhardt, half Sean Connery. And so Burgess Meredith's voice is just, and he kills in that movie. But the figure, the snake barely bends. You can, apparently it breaks a lot. It can barely, bend at all. And so you're left with this just flappy thing. It's just very disappointing in what would be a cool figure. And at the time, I'm admitting I didn't not liking Cobra Law, I was like, a snake guy, that's kind of awesome. It's like that's a Clash of the Titans shit, man. I'm on board, but he's not good. Okay, next in line we have Outback. Now, I was really liked Outback as a kid. I think because he was really muscular. His build was a little different. I like muscle men. I guess I don't know what does that say about me. I don't know why I was so into muscular dudes. I'm not now. Maybe I am. I don't know. I don't really care if they're muscular, but it was like the fact that he was kind of ripped. He was like the most ripped of any figure, really. It was like they used a different sculpt on him, and he's filling out that T-shirt nicely. He's got a T-shirt. He had a couple of cool little things. Is that he had a flashlight that stuck on his leg, kind of like that. and just a vibe from him. His t-shirt's kind of not that exciting in retrospect. I definitely prefer my Tiger Force Outback, but he was a cool figure of the time. Next, we have Zanzibar. Now, I'm a sucker for dreadnoks, so any dreadnok is good dreadnok. And Zanzibar is one of the more interesting. Also, the first figure to have actual hair. But overall, Zanzibar is a pretty great character. He's like the scummiest of all of the dreadnoks. This skiff he comes with, I could do without. I mean, it honestly is a kind of nothing little vehicle. But it does have some nice storage for all his weapons. That spear's pretty gnarly. A hammer. These don't feel like dreadnok weapons to me, so he's not my favorite dreadnok. To me, a dreadnok weapon should be a weapon that is used for destroying things, right? For cutting apart a sky striker. That's what a dreadnok weapon should do, and you can't do that with a little hammer and a spear. So, but he's pretty cool. Pretty cool to have a dreadnok pirate.
And here's Zanzibar, the Dreadnok's pirate, meanest Dreadnoks yet.
You can't escape me, air skiff. Hope I didn't dirty your nice uniform, matey.
Next in line, we have, now all these are great, of course, from here on in. This is the last, 12. All great. All winners. We have Law and Order. Now, Law and Order, we get another pet. And, anytime you get a pet, it was exciting. Came with a nightstick. And just the duo kind of thing. Anytime you have a pet, it's always fun. Really looking forward. I think they did an amazing job with the classified Law and Order. Is Law and Order as good as Mutt and Junkyard? I don't like him as much because, frankly, Mutt wears a muzzle. And I mean, a man who wears a muzzle is just so weird and cool. So for me, he was like a redo of Mutt and Junkyard. Still very cool. A little bit more real world. My dad was a military police at one point, so that was kind of cool. MP, having an MP is awesome. Next in line at number 11, we have Crystal Ball. And I'm super psyched for Crystal Ball, the classified version, because I think finally you got to do something better than this. Because the original figure is extremely disappointing. The idea of Crystal Ball is cool, and I always did like him. For me, what I made him as a kid was he was spiritual advisor to Serpentor. So, right, so he did have second sight. He could see through things. He could see the future or whatever. And he was a mystical dude. I've also liked takes of him in the comic books where he's got, long fingernails. He's kind of creepy, and he's more a cult leader kind of guy. So I think there's potential for him as a character, which he's never really lived up with. Where he kind of falls down and sort of sucks. He also has Vincent Price's face, and I'm a huge Monster fan. So Stephen King wrote the file card, apparently, which I don't think he did any better of that job than Larry Hama would have. But he has Vincent Price's face, and that is a very cool. So for me, he was kind of a fun character. Where he falls down is he has one stinking accessory, and it's a stupid shield with a little lenticular thing, and it's so lame. And he's supposed to hypnotize people with it. So he's hypnotizing people with a shield. It just was kind of lame. And, you could use it as a Captain America shield, but that didn't really feel right either. So, for me, it's just a cool idea. I dig him. We're getting real weird here. But I can find a way to fit him into my weird military world. It's not too weird for me. I know for some of you it's too weird. He's cool. Variant to the new one. I think they did him right because the original one just lacked. He should have had knives. He should have had, he should have been a scary, weird psychic, whatever. Next in line in the weird world, and we are still, these are the weirdos that make this the weirdest year of G.I. Joe. We have Raptor. Raptor was a bizarre character. He's the accountant, and he wears a bird suit. Now, they've turned him into a flying suit guy, and I think when I first saw that, I was like, that's not who he is. He's a guy who uses birds of prey. So what he should have come with in the classified version is a cage full of 7 birds. I would have liked that. But I do like the version they came up with. That he does make more sense. I think I'm coming around. But he just like struck me as just he's a crazy person. And that's how we treated him in the comic book. You can tell Larry Hama occasionally had real contempt for some things and just wouldn't use them, or use them like once or twice. And he was just like, Cobra Commander was like, who is this crazy person? Just get him out of my face. That's kind of how that was kind of fun to play with. And I did like that bird. I did like having that bird. Imagine it having metal on its talons, so make it more effective, and maybe beak. You can make it drop bombs. You could have it do some things, and you can imagine there's a lot of them. He was kind of cool in that, as crazy as he is and weird as he is, for me, it was a win. Next in line, we have Falcon. Now, Falcon, I loved Falcon as a kid. Certainly because of the movie. He had Don Johnson's voice. I was a Miami Vice fan. But even then, just, he was the new Flint Duke, new star of the show. And as the star of the show, I also appreciated his weapons. Anybody came a little survival, he had a like Rambo survival knife that fit in his backpack. I was really like, anybody had a knife, I was into it. Green Beret, I mean, he's great. So one of the cool, very cool figure back in the day. Didn't have that weird Matt Damon face. I was into him. Love Falcon. Next in line, we have the Steel Brigade. Now, I love the Steel Brigade. What is so good about this? G.I. Joe needed a red shirt. Someone that Destro could kill. Because I was not, I don't know how you felt. Let me know. Did you kill your good guys? Did you was there a high body count? Were you murdering and then having them resurrected? For me, I felt it was too continuous, and so if I killed somebody, I probably wasn't going to use them later, which is sort of silly, I guess, but it's just sort of how it worked. So I very unlikely to kill a G.I. Joe character. Maybe I did it a few times here and there. So it was unlikely. In retrospect, it's probably more fun to kill them and just resurrect them. But you needed people because you wanted Cobra to win sometimes, right? Because Cobra's cool. Cobra's cooler. You want somebody, Destro, to walk into a room and wrist rocket somebody's head off, karate chop somebody in the neck with his, beryllium steel hands. Or I want the Dreadnoks go to town on a bunch of Joes, chainsaws, buzzers, chainsawing people, torch lighting them on fire, Road Pig using a sledgehammer, and not having them survive. This allowed you to do that. So yeah, the whole idea was you got your own figure. So you mailed it away, you got your own figure, had your name on it, but for me, these were the red shirts. These were the guys who were going to die, the nameless guys who were cannon fodder, and you needed that cannon fodder. I had one late, and so I never had a legion of them. Right now, I have the 2-pack, and I do use them as that. That is fun. Laying out, having a little battle. Those guys are dying. Yeah, horribly. And that makes it fun. Next in line, we have Big Boa now. Big Boa, just the sculpt of this guy was incredible. Helmet was inspired by the Beastmaster. The Beastmaster, there's this, monster that shows up. But I just love the idea of this guy who was just a massive dude. He was fun to have fight. Sergeant Slaughter and him got into it a lot. If you wanted to use wrestling moves in your G.I. Joe, he was the guy you fought against. He's got the spikes on his chest. Boxing gloves is kind of a lame accessory. Punching bag, can't really do a lot with that. But he didn't need a weapon. He is a weapon. Okay, next in line, we have Cobra La Royal Guard. The best figure out of the lot. The only figure in the Cobra La set that lives up to the cartoon version. This thing was awesome. His armor looks great. The sculpt is great. He has that incredible axe blade that is just absolutely devastating. File card, also well written. Talks about how just one of these can wipe out an entire legion of soldiers. So imagining what legions of them can do would be really awesome. So just a win as far as the sculpt goes. There's a texture to the body of it. It's like a crustacean type armor, as most things are, I think. And it just has a great look, a great feel to it. Has a little tube that attaches to the face that could be ripped off. A really good figure, and the only one in the Cobra La set that really works. Next in line, we have Cobra Commander and his battle armor. Oh man, this thing is awesome. I mean, finally Cobra Commander, who was never much of a fighter, I would see him as. Like, he's commanding things. He is a mastermind. He's a genius. He's a psychopath. But, you know, in the cartoon, he's always running away. And the comic book, he's more likely to send people out to do his bidding and, you know, try not to fight if he can avoid it. But this is the time when he can fight, because now he's in a super powered robotic suit. Enhances his strength. He has a little breathing tube, so now he can go underwater. He can, you know, go through poison gas. He's got that pretty impressive laser gun. That backpack, don't know what that's supposed to do. It's got some spikes on it. Never really figured out a use or an idea for that. But here we've got an awesome way to make Cobra Commander part of the battle. So really love this suit. You could also imagine it having any kind of weapon. Does it have a flamethrower in the sleeve like, you know, Boba Fett? Does it have, you know, hidden guns, hidden knives? And hopefully when they come out with one for classified, that I hope this is one where they just deluxe it, make it, you know, really, and maybe a little bit of a reimagining. Let's do some things with it to make it impressive. Hidden weapons that maybe come out, you know, or attach. That would be cool. But yeah, I mean, this is a win. Okay, next in line, we have Tunnel Rat. Now, Tunnel Rat is one of the great G.I. Joe characters. Came out later in years. Face sculpt was after Larry Hama. Love the file card. So well written. File card reads, anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So he's ready to go into a tunnel, the smallest space, you know, scared of nothing. I like the idea that he's like maybe a smaller guy so he can fit into tunnels, and then they did play that up in G.I. Joe Renegades where he became more of a main character, which is a pretty good cartoon, by the way, if you haven't. But also he's decked out, that gun, you know, very long machine gun, TNT pack, and then this massive backpack that had the flashlights that could be taken out. So he just really was unique. He strikes a really interesting balance with G.I. Joe, where he looks military. He looks like, you know, and sometimes you want some of those guys. I like the mix. I like to have the crazy people, and I like to have the guys that look like they really do fit into a military unit. But sometimes those guys who fit into a military unit can be generic and dull. And he's one who fits in the military unit, but really, really feels unique. Has a lot of character. So, really great character. Love Tunnel Rat. Okay, number 3. My number 3 favorite figure of the year is the Techno Viper. The only Viper this year. And this thing is awesome. The helmet inspired by the Battlestar Galactica villains, and this, you know, purple decked out. But what I really love about this guy is his weapon loadout. I mean, giant massive backpack. He had that gun that I imagine is some sort of welding weapon, right? That's what it probably is. He's going to have some sort of welding weapon that can maybe also be used to blast stuff, because these are the guys that go out and, sure, these are the good mechanics of Cobra. These are the guys that go and build a terror drone. You're, of course, as a kid, anytime a figure came with something that was not just a gun, for me, it was like everybody came with a gun. When they came with a melee weapon, any kind of melee weapon, that was when I was really excited. And he has 3. So he's got that hammer that looks like it maybe has an articulating arm. So it ultra hammer, you know, whatever. Everything's electrified, or, you know, it works. That claw arm wrench thing that looks pretty ferocious. So for me, it was like, you come across a bunch of Techno Vipers, now you're fighting them hand to hand, and they've got all these weapons they're laying out, hitting you with a hammer, hitting you with a claw, grabbing your leg, pinching it off with a claw, hitting you with their hammer, you know, shooting you with a welding gun. Really fun. One of the coolest, you know, vipers ever. Absolutely one of the coolest villains. And number 2, we have my second favorite figure of the year is Jinx, and I just love Jinx. Jinx is one of the coolest, first of all, ninjas. This was before we went ninja crazy. We had 3 million ninjas, so this was like a third ninja, right? So you were excited to get yet another ninja at this point still. And, they're Rashikage. She's part of that clan. She's Storm Shadow's cousin. Then she's built up in the movie to have that specific idea where she can, see with her mind's eye.
Care to try it again? My way? As my blind ninja master used to say. Ha! The keenest eye is that which looks inward.
And blindfold herself, so you would use that in play. That was one of those things that really worked. And then that weapon. I mean, that is just like that staff. So fun to play, to use that unique staff. And the fact that she's another woman character. There's not that many female characters. Apparently, toy line did not want to make women. And the G.I. Joe line had more women than just about any other toy line other than She-Ra or something, right? But she's only like the 4th G.I. Joe woman, right? So, I think 4th G.I. Joe woman, I think. And then even her file card says, she's bad luck, right? So it's really interesting character. And, I love me some ninjas. What am I going to say? And the last, and the one, and this is like one of the weirdest characters of the year, one of the weirdest sculpts. This is actually one of the last things Ron Rudat did. He passed on to Mark Pennington, who then finished it. But man, is this an amazing figure. And just really got my imagination going, and I had a lot of fun with this guy, which is Crocmaster. So, my favorite figure of the year, 1, he comes with a crocodile. How can you not love a figure that comes with a crocodile? The leash is just a massive chain with a spiked collar, so even that, like taking that off and having him swing that around. Then he came with that whip, like having a whip that could, tie it around his hand. So, and he was also huge. He had that bigger sculpt. So for me, he was like one of the bigger guys. For me, he was a guy Gung-Ho was going up against him. This was Gung-Ho versus Crocmaster, or Roadblock, because he's a bigger guy. He's a scary, crazy. This one is almost unsettling, right? He lives with the crocodiles. He dreams green dreams. That's what his file card says. So the file card really creates some real interesting ideas about this guy. This guy's a scary guy. You don't want to mess with him. The idea that he is guarding the tunnels of Cobra Island with crocodiles that he's trained and he lives with, and he's got that little tube next to his mouth so he can go underwater and just act like a crocodile and hang out with them. Absolutely terrifying idea, and a really great figure. I think one of the best classified figures too. Crocmaster is my favorite weird character from the weird year 1987. That's what I think. What do you think? Let me know your favorites from this year in the comments below. What year should I talk about next? Thanks.